I have my mask. I had to take it off. You know, I tried talking and I can't talk. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. And we just appreciate your continued coverage on behalf of the City of New Orleans and, more importantly, our general public, the residents of our city. Here today to formally announce our guidelines for Phase 1 of reopening the City of New Orleans, again in a phased approach. In Orleans Parish, Phase 1 will begin 6 a.m. on Saturday, May the 16th. Okay? We have been very intentional and have shaped these guidelines based on the data, as you've heard me say repeatedly, and based on science. We have gotten to this milestone because of the sacrifices our people have made. You took this seriously, you paid attention, and it mattered. As we laid out in our data presentation on yesterday, we are seeing a reason for hope in the critical milestones that we're looking at. And they are a steady decline in cases. You saw that on yesterday. Over 21 days, the city, steady decline. Testing capacity. We've tested more in the City of New Orleans than in countries. And we're confident in our ability to maintain the level of testing with our partners, whether it's Ochsner, LCMC, you name it, their boots on the ground, Rockefeller, many different partners. Healthcare capacity, very strong as it relates to our capacity in terms of ICU beds, in regards to ventilators. The readiness for contact tracing. You've heard a lot about contact tracing, even misconstrued some of my words, but contact tracing is a priority, and we know that this is going to be led in multiple fronts, but at the end of the day, at the top is the Louisiana Department of Health. The progress we've made in fighting this virus has been, again, because of the mutual choices that we have exercised as it relates to us trusting one another, that civic trust. The people of New Orleans have chosen over the past 2 months and growing, months and weeks, it seems so long, and you think about, wow, it's been like 2 months, and you think you've been in here for over almost a year. It just seems so fast we've been in this. And although we have made it through these months and weeks, it's been because of, again, our ability to trust the science and trust the scientists, to trust the plan that our public health leaders as well as government that we put forth and in place to prevent needless infections and ultimately to save lives. Now, we've lost 477 of our residents, grieve every single day. But because of our mandates, make no mistake about it, we know that we've saved lives and hundreds of lives. We've trusted one another and even trusting ourselves to trust that we have a future beyond COVID-19, and we really do. We must continue our part and continue within our pact of that mutual trust as we take these next steps to reopening the City of New Orleans, a phased reopening, slow, and to reclaim our lives. Our path forward, it won't be easy. We understand that. We know that we're charting the course as we're moving through, and we are seeing progress. But it will not be easy, and we may not have all the answers right now, but we will continue to be driven again by science, by data. But if we can be patient and united in our purpose, which we've demonstrated that we have the ability and capacity to do, to keep trusting in what we can accomplish together, we will find out that as it relates to our recovery, we will find it in good health and prosperity that is driven by science, common sense, and just care care for our fellow residents, our fellow neighbors in the city of New Orleans, caring for one another. This spirit of trust it has to run through every aspect of our lives, and no matter who we are or what we have. When this is behind us, I really want to join with you and this entire city for us saying, hey, our city is better because of our actions. We're more prosperous because of our action, and we're more caring and more full of opportunity because of how we've responded to COVID-19. And as I've even done my little research on pandemics, and you find out that how the world has changed through pandemics way back. So whether that is what I'd say, indoor plumbing, right? Sewer, public housing, like these are some examples that have grown out of pandemics in the past. So make no mistake about it. I know that through innovation and creativity, we will continue to be better, and we're going to be better because of this. As we lay these guidelines out today, we begin to loosen. And what I like to use, I've been telling my team this morning and last night and talking to mayors all across the country, I kind of visualize a faucet. And so this is our opportunity. We're about to turn the faucet on, but not high stream. We're just going to get a little bit of this water, and we're going to test it, and we're going to be able to respond should we need to turn that faucet off. To move to the next phase, people absolutely must continue to pay attention, not just now, but to continue to follow the guidelines, continue to be smart, and to be safe. Under phase 1, we're calling it safest at home, because you're still safest at home. Now, while we're again loosening it up, we're encouraging our people to not be moving all about. Continue to look towards getting your essential needs met, but again, safest at home. Our seniors, and not just our seniors, when we started this, we kind of just focused just on our senior population, but what we learned through the months is that not only our seniors are impacted, it's our people who are living with pre-existing conditions. So people who are living with pre-existing conditions right now, you are safest at home. This is not a call to action for you to move about the city. You are still safest at home. And some of those underlying issues, number one, at over 50%, was hypertension. Diabetes was the next. All of those things we know. Chronic heart disease, kidney disease. These are issues of pre-existing conditions that our people have suffered from, and at the end of the day, it played a large role in the lives that we have lost thus far, 477. As we move forward, everyone must wear a face covering in public. Now, if we're wanting to reopen the city, it's going to come with an even greater responsibility, and that is of all of us. We must prepare to cover our face in public. Continue to practice social distancing. Gatherings are still limited to small family groups no larger than 10 people. As of Saturday, we will be making the following adjustments to ease restrictions, kind of turning on that faucet. You can go right now to our guidelines that we have posted online at ready.nola.gov/reopening. Okay, here we go. Worship and religious services. Now, I struggle with this one because it is perceived as a high risk. But also understanding that, being able to worship, it does matter, and it plays a big role in who we are as people, in our spirituality. So we're going to allow for opening of our houses of worship at 25% capacity or 100 people, whatever is the smallest. We cannot go over 100. This is stricter than the state guidance, which only uses the percentage. So we're not just limiting it to the percentage. We're saying 100 cap, 25% capacity, or a cap at 100, whatever is the lower number. It's because we have establishments like churches, for example, you can seat 3,500. You can seat, and if you do the math with that 25%, you're still providing or allowing hundreds of people to gather. We cannot gather. It's very important that we do not. Restaurants or food establishments, they may reopen at 25% capacity for table service, but must take reservations and appointments. So, if you have, and you can also have a walk-in, but if they walk in, you need to treat them as if they're a reservation. Take a name and take a number. Outside dining is strongly encouraged. Again, walk-in diners should be booked with a reservation on the spot. Restaurants should retain a name and contact number for over 21 days, and that may change as we move forward with Friday, as we approach Saturday. But right now, we know keeping the data will matter, and it does tie in to our contact tracing process. Retail. Stores with exterior entrances can open at 25% of capacity, maintaining all social distancing practices. Museums, zoos, aquariums are all limited to 25% of permitted capacity. The admission should be staggered using an appointment or reservation system only. Office buildings and businesses are limited to 25% of capacity. People who are working from home, we're encouraging folks to continue to work from home. This is what should happen. At City Hall, for example, city employees that are working from home, they will continue to do so as we make the changes within government. But right now, and as we move forward for the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're keeping our people at home, and that may be extended. Businesses should each register with the state fire marshal for specific reopening guidance. Great guidance, I'm telling you, that the state fire marshal has created. The website is friendly, and I'm telling you, I think just testing it out, Ramsey Green, our deputy CEO of infrastructure, is registered I don't know how many businesses, you know, Ramsey Styles, Ramsey's Hard Bodies, Ramsey's Place of Worship, just so we can test it out ourselves to make sure that our folks are getting the information that they need, but in a timely manner. We are requiring all businesses, again, to register with the state fire marshal. The state is recommending, but the city of New Orleans, we are mandating. It's not an option. We're going to use this data as well to focus on compliance. OpenSafely.la.gov. That's where you go to register your business and receive, again, specific guidelines for your business type. What is not allowed? Casinos and video poker in Orleans Parish, not allowed. You know, I had a text message, I think it was a message this morning, and someone said, you know, my mother saved a lot of money with that casino closed. I said, well, she's going to continue to save just a little bit more. Now, we're going to open up at some point, but right now we're going to let mama save a little bit. And we know that our locals, this is a good thing. Spas, tattoo and massage parlors closed. Live entertainment, amusement, and event venues closed. The Children's Museum closed. Bars without a food permit closed. And we're just, you know, attaching them to food establishments. Restaurants or food establishments, but bars without a food permit will remain closed. Private gatherings with more than a reasonable household size continues to be not allowed. So that's prohibited. The New Orleans Police Department, along with the city departments of safety and permits, code enforcement, will be enforcing our new guidelines, and residents should continue to report non-compliance to 311. As we indicated at the beginning of this process, some of our guidelines in Orleans will be much more stricter than of the state. Absolutely. It matters. We have been at the forefront in terms of being the hot spot in the state of Louisiana. We've made tremendous gains in terms of the most gains in the state of Louisiana in that Region 1, and we do not want to regress. No casinos, churches capped at 100. We require businesses to register with the state fire marshal. No groups, no classes or locker rooms at gyms. No theater performances, no live performances. So we are very grateful, to all of our stakeholders that have played a role in this. More importantly, just our healthcare professionals who have been guiding us every step of the way. I am going to ask our leader, fierce leader, Dr. Jennifer Avegno, to come forward and to just give you a little more information as our expert on public health. So Dr. Avegno, at this time, come forward. You know what? You need to use that because I was talking down. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everybody. As the Mayor said, and as we've said on many occasions, because of the stay-at-home mandate and the sacrifices, the real sacrifices that all of our residents have made, we have been able to meet the milestones necessary to move into phase 1 of our safe but phased reopening plan. And again, this will be a bit of repetition. Those milestones include the sustained trend of low and declining new cases of COVID, the ability to consistently test 4 to 5% of our population each month, the set protocol for contact tracing, monitoring, and isolation, adequate healthcare system capacity, and our sector-specific guidelines for safe operations. We are there, and again, we'll begin the process of easing into phase 1 on Saturday. But we are very closely monitoring and will continue to monitor the situation and must be prepared to reinstate restrictions if needed, if the trends go in an unfavorable direction. Remember how quickly our cases came. Remember how fast and how close we were to being overwhelmed. We cannot let that happen again. We're going to continue our mobile testing program in neighborhoods as long as we can. We will be expanding that next week, and we're bringing on new partners to expand it even further. So again, I just want to reiterate some of what the Mayor said about what will not change on Saturday. So phase 1 is what we're calling safest at home. That's exactly what it sounds. Everyone should continue to stay home except for essential needs and these additional lower risk activities on a limited basis. Again, our seniors and people with serious medical conditions should continue to do so, and that is because they bear the highest risk of hospitalizations and deaths. This is to protect them from serious illness or death. If you can effectively maintain your livelihood and do your job at home, you should continue to do that. Even if you could go into an office building, and it is allowed, the more people into circulation in the population means the virus spreads quicker. So those of you who are privileged enough to maintain your livelihood by staying home, you should continue to do that for your sake and for all of our sake. Gatherings will continue to be limited to a household size. So you should limit the number of people you're regularly in contact with. So this is your family, or this is a small and consistent crew. Crew with a C, not with Krewe. So just because we're allowing, for example, restaurants to open at a limited capacity does not mean that you should be going out to dinner every night with a different group of people. That would be a risky activity at this point. Now that we're beginning to allow more activities, remember the basics of preventing the spread of disease. They have not changed. Everyone must wear a mask or face covering in indoor public places. My mask protects you and your mask protects me. You do not have to wear a face covering when you are doing your outside recreation, but you still have to abide by social distancing and good hygiene. Wash your hands often. Stay at least 6 feet away from others. Frequently disinfect surfaces. If you are sick, you still should stay home and recuperate. If you come into close contact again is that 6 feet for 10 minutes with someone who's COVID positive, you will have to quarantine for 14 days, again, to limit the spread. And so as you just heard, and as you'll hear more, our phase 1 plan is very closely aligned with the statewide guidelines that Governor Edwards announced yesterday, and that's important. But we are, as you just heard, being more restrictive in some instances. And that's because we bear a larger burden than other areas of the state, and we were disproportionately affected severely early on. We peaked fast, we peaked high, and again, though we've made tremendous progress, we need to proceed with extra caution, and that's what we're doing. So again, the main differences between what the governor presented yesterday and what we in Orleans Parish need to know, just to reiterate, in Orleans Parish, casinos, video poker, live performance theaters will not be allowed in phase 1. Restaurants with table service will require to utilize a reservation or appointment system. Video poker will not be allowed. Beauty salons, barber shops will also be required to utilize a reservation or appointment system. Again, houses of worship can resume services at 25% of their occupancy or 100 people, whichever is fewer. And large groups in churches like choirs will not be permitted. Movie theaters as well will be restricted to 25% or occupancy or 100 people, whichever is fewer. Gyms and fitness centers will be allowed to have 25% of permitted occupancy, but no contact sports, no group classes, no shared areas such as spas, saunas, locker rooms, showers. And as the governor announced yesterday, and consistent with that guidance, spas, tattoo parlors, massage parlors, live entertainment, amusement spaces, and event venues, children's museums, and bars without food permits will remain closed. We are taking extra restrictions because the risk of large group events or potentially events or spaces where people could congregate and spread the virus very quickly is real. Some of the most tragic outbreaks have happened from seemingly harmless activities like choir practice, like parties, like weddings, like funerals. So our extra restrictions are designed to mitigate some of these risks. Ultimately, though, it is up to each and every one of us to choose to make good decisions. We have a responsibility to ourselves, our families, and our loved ones to prevent the spread of this disease. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And so we'll keep it going. We're going to hear from Colin Arnold, our Director of Homeland Security, followed by our Superintendent of Police, Sean Ferguson. And we will also hear from Council President Jason Williams. So, Colin?
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to really just reiterate how proud I am of the community, my neighbors, my friends, and every resident of this city. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And I think it's pretty clear that, you know, with a phased reopening, we are allowing some things to occur, but the responsibility on all of us is that much greater. And you really can't overstress that the option moving forward is to take responsibility and take this seriously, or to go backwards. And that is something that I know that everyone, whether you agree or disagree with what's been going on, everybody has to know that there's only two options, and the preferred option, the only option really, is we need to move forward being responsible. In addition, I just want to say that the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness has been very engaged in preparing for the 2020 hurricane season in a COVID-19 landscape. I've stood up here before and talked about some of the challenges. I will say this: we're lucky as a community that we are prepared, because we've been having video teleconference and teleconference meetings all week with our utilities partners, the National Guard today. We'll have transportation partners later on this week, Corps of Engineers and Flood Protection Authorities this week. We're full steam ahead, working with our state and federal partners to make sure that we are prepared for hurricane season 2020 and a very unique situation. I will say particularly in the realm of evacuation. Those things are being worked on right now. The high line is social distancing and PPE at all parts of this process should we have to evacuate for a major hurricane. We're lucky in the sense that the partners that we've been dealing with, although we normally meet face-to-face on a yearly basis, we've been having to do, adjust to the times and do teleconference meetings. It's very comforting, and I think that the public should know and be comforted that we have a lot of the same players, a lot of the same faces, people that I've been able to shake hands with in the past, and although we can't right now, they're the same faces and the same people, and they have the same brain, and they have the same ideas about what we're going to do this year with hurricane season. So with that, my remarks are brief, and I just want to say thank you, New Orleans, for listening to us. Please pay attention, and please, a week after Phase 1, we're going to have Memorial Day weekend. Please be responsible. Our future depends on all of us. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Let me start first by thanking our great mayor for your leadership and your resolve during these challenging times to do what is necessary to ensure the safety and health for the entire city of New Orleans. I want to thank you, the public, the city of New Orleans, for your compliance during this stay-at-home order. And thank you for your outpouring support of the loss of our own fellow officers during this public health emergency. I'm proud to see, with the exception of one particular incident, calls of large gatherings resulted in only warnings by the New Orleans Police Department. There were no arrests or no further citations issued. To date, we have received just over 2,500 calls to report large gatherings. However, recently, we are seeing a lower number in those same reports, more of an informal gathering rather than a formal gathering. But when called, the New Orleans Police Department remained ready and steadfast to respond immediately. Now, with Phase 1 of the reopening plan going into effect this Saturday, the New Orleans Police Department will work closely and continue to do so as we have been over the last few weeks and months with the Department of Safety and Permits to enforce requirements and limits on gatherings. However, the ban on gatherings larger than the household size remains in effect. That means no second lines, no parades, no block parties until further notice. We will continue to issue warnings whenever possible, but our level of enforcement will depend on the compliance of you, the business owners and residents of New Orleans. Residents and business owners should continue to contact or call 311 or go to NOLA311.org to make complaints about violations of large gatherings. Anyone not following these gathering requirements may be charged with municipal ordinance for violating the mayor's mandate. This may result in a misdemeanor citation, which has a $500 fine and/or 6 months in jail. Also, changes at the New Orleans Police Department will include the opening or continuing opening of our 8 district police lobbies for emergency purposes only. I've heard the concerns of our constituents with regards to obtaining police reports. I pondered back and forth as to whether I want to open up our record room just yet, but I think I'm going to align it with our courts as to that is when our reports are needed to work with the courts. So we're going to wait a few more weeks, and I ask you, the citizens, to please bear with us as we hold off for a few more weeks before we open up our record room to ensure that you have the documents that are needed to proceed with your legal proceedings. However, entering any of our public facilities we are mandating that you wear a mask and you will have your temperature checked upon entrance. Starting this Sunday, you will see that our officers will transition from our tactical duty uniforms to our regular dress uniforms that we are so well known for. But this is not the time to give up, citizens, and have a free-for-all. This is a time to stay committed to the new norms that we've all learned that we are able to do over these last few months. Your compliance, your self-responsibility can be the difference between weeks and months moving forward as to getting back to what we are known for doing, having that Southern hospitality of hugging, kissing, handshaking, and greeting one another. So again, I thank you, New Orleans, for all that you have done in being compliant and being resilient during these difficult times. But together we will continue to work hard to get through this public health emergency. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We have a governor and we have a mayor who believe in science. And let's thank God for that. Not every state and not every city is blessed with that. I can't imagine being in a place dealing with a person who is running afoul of simple science. You've heard the phase 1 reopening plan from the state and the municipal levels. And it has been designed to minimize loss of life and to begin to resuscitate our local economy. Is the plan perfect? No. No city has a perfect plan. No city has a perfect plan because this is a war. And this is a war against an invisible threat of COVID-19. And the goal in war is keeping as many of the people on your side alive. And that is what these protocols are here for. Now, don't think that because we have got to this phase 1 point that the threat of infection is gone or even really minimized. There is no cure. There still is no vaccine. I can tell you that my 73-year-old mother will follow the same protocol she was following 2 weeks ago. And I would encourage anyone that is up in age, anyone who has any underlying condition, regardless of how good you feel, to follow the good habits that you have put in place during this COVID-19 crisis. If you can continue to work at home, I suggest you still do that. I know a number of lawyers who think now's the time to go back to your office building. And there are going to be a number of people thinking the exact same way. And I just don't think you can properly socially distance going from the first floor to the 18th floor of an elevator. So if you can continue to do your job with Zoom and working remotely, I encourage you to do so. And just as the mayor has said, and I thank her for her hard work and dedication, there's no sleeping and time off. There really is no Mother's Day during a crisis like this. Dr. Vegno, I want to thank you as well because you have been rock solid throughout probably the most difficult thing we will go through in our lifetime. The people of the city of New Orleans, you have done so much to crush this curve in a way that no other city has. People talk about numbers of cases in other cities, but they don't talk about the rate of spread. That's just as important of a formula. Our rate of spread was close to that of Italy. If we had lost the same number of people that they lost in New York, can you imagine the condition we'd be in? We don't have that population size. But through your sacrifice, through your adherence to the mayor's protocols, an executive order is just words on a page unless private citizens follow it. So I know this plan is not perfect. We all know this plan is not perfect. There is no perfect plan in this country or in this world right now. But it is designed to protect the people of New Orleans. And together, we will crush this curve. Together we'll be able to kiss hello like we always have. But that time is not now. And if you don't have to be out, let me encourage you, don't go out. And I want to say to business owners, just because the governor and the mayor have said you can open your restaurant at a 25% occupancy level, just because you can do something doesn't mean you ought to do it. Work the math for yourself. Figure out if that 25% is going to help you pay for what you need to pay for, or if it makes sense to let your employees stay home and get that unemployment. Do the math for yourself. Just because you can does not mean you ought to. COVID-19 has not gone anywhere. This is our attempt to resuscitate our economy, which we know we desperately need to do, but we probably need to have even more strict personal habits now than we did when we were at home. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Doc. And let's get through this.
All right, let's get through it. We're going to take the first step. As we've demonstrated, our ability to follow science, let that data drive us. You will not see a date on the next order. Okay, so there will be no date on the next order. We will move through this as the data shows us that we can make additional changes. And of course, if the data says that we're moving in the wrong direction, we'll turn off that faucet. But we're moving forward this Saturday starting at 6 a.m. So with that, Ms. Latanya, we can do questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Associated Press. About contact tracing.
Hmm?
Can you hear me through this? Okay.
Yeah, you do good.
Is the city doing any contact tracing of its own, or is it all state?
Okay, so the contact tracing is provided through the Louisiana Department of Health at the state level, as they've been doing contact tracing on everything for years, right? Measles and chicken pox, you name it. But the state is hiring up. They expect to be at 200 by Friday, by 700, if I'm not mistaken, by June 1. So that is the LDH contact tracers that will be provided as well to the city of New Orleans. We know that a regional office will be housed in Orleans Parish. Right now, how many contact tracers? I do not have the number yet. We're still working with the state on that. But contact tracing comes with the responsibility of all of us. So whether it's, of course, the state, LDH, making that initial contact after someone is tested positive, but also if you go to that restaurant, make that reservation, or walk in, take it like it's a reservation. General public, know where you're going. Like, take a little notes just to make yourself, remind yourself of where you've been. It's a step in the right direction, and it's a sign of responsibility. But all of us will play a role in contact tracing. But the larger or the largest component does come through the Louisiana Department of Health. Based on the cases in Orleans, we do. However, we're going to make sure that we have the necessary capacity on the ground in Orleans Parish, and we're waiting what that number is, unless Dr. Vegno has gotten it within the past hour. And you want to, okay. Well, the city needs to be connected to the state health department. That has to be, okay? So the city of New Orleans, in regards to our contact tracing outside of what's mandated, will be how do we, when we do open City Hall back up to the public, we will have measures in place to know who's coming in City Hall and where they're going. So that will be built into our reopening strategy and process. But again, that's separate, right, from the Louisiana Department of Health. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Reservations, yes, ma'am. And what we do know, appointment only if you're going to the beauty shop, if you're going to the barber shop, if you're going to the gym. These are guidelines or provisions that are embedded in the guidelines that you can access from the state fire marshal. And Dr. Vegno?
I just wanted to clarify. So in New Orleans, we are the only parish that has its own health department. In fact, our health department is older than the state health department by decades. So it makes sense statewide for the Louisiana Department of Health to run contact tracing. But just as we have in the past, when there's been a potential case of measles or tuberculosis in the city of New Orleans, the New Orleans Health Department has augmented and assisted the State Department of Health with contact tracing. We have a great relationship with them, and we plan to do that however needed or desired.
And in addition to that, we're working on a partnership to ensure that our residents in the city of New Orleans have an opportunity to be employed as a contact tracer.
Well, Mayor, has there been a revocation of business licenses to date for violating the mandate? And are there any plans for enforcement of masks and what that might look like? And then are there plans to change who qualifies for testing? If so, what does that look like? If not, what are the plans to expand that?
Qualifies for testing. We have open testing. Dr. Vegno can speak to that. We've been doing that for weeks now in various neighborhoods throughout the city of New Orleans as we're wanting to do that deeper dive and taking that opportunity where people are living. There was a question about the masks. You're required to wear a mask. Now, no one's going to be arrested if you do not. We don't want any altercations because you're not. But we're asking for, again, personal responsibility. Businesses will be required to ensure that their employees have a mask as well as their patrons wear a mask. There was a third one you had.
Yeah, has there been any, have you had to revoke any business licenses to date for violating previous mandates or for the new mandate?
Sure. We have not had to do any revocation, so we have not had to do that. However, we've had to shut several down through the past 9 weeks. This process we've gone through, we have had to shut a couple of them down. I don't have the exact number offhand, but we did not pull their license permanently. I think that's what you were alluding to. Okay. Well, no, you need to come on. Come on, Doc.
Concerns about children getting sick with pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome in the world. Apparently that's on the rise.
So what that phenomenon is just starting to be described and understood. It seems to be much like other viruses. What doesn't get talked about a lot is that for the thousands and thousands of people that get the flu, a very, very, very small number of them, and sometimes it's children, get a strange inflammatory process weeks after that seemingly benign flu infection. It's something we've seen in flu and other viruses. It looks like that is starting to happen with COVID. We've heard about cases in New York of children who were infected with COVID weeks and weeks ago, seemed to be doing okay, were doing fine, and then had this in what looks like this pediatric inflammatory syndrome similar to Kawasaki's disease, which is a pediatric disease. That is still a very, very, very rare complication. It is definitely something that we are looking out for in New Orleans. Just as, we were in the early rise like New York. Our cases started earlier, or we diagnosed them earlier, I should say, than a lot of other places in the country. But we do expect other cities to start noting that. I know that our pediatric specialists are watching this closely, monitoring it. I know the CDC is monitoring. Our medical societies have put out guidance about it. Right now, it's something that we don't understand. It does seem that most children are recovering from it, which is a good thing. So hopefully the effects will be minimal and rare.
After a hurricane comes, got to start bringing people together for hurricane evacuation.
Right. I'll turn that over to Colin.
That's been a top priority in thinking through hurricane season. Yep.
So as I said earlier, think about all of this in the frame of an evacuation as social distancing and PPE. The state is working very hard right now to identify every location that they can in central and north Louisiana out of the hurricane zone so that we can adequately shelter people with social distancing. It can be done. It's done in medical sheltering quite frequently. We just have to do it on a larger scale. And from the time, and I'm talking specifically about the city-assisted evacuation, okay? So this is the for people who absolutely do not have any other way of getting out of the city. By and large, the majority of our residents will self-evacuate. They need to have, those people, everyone needs to have a plan. And they need to be working on their plan now, especially take the time while you're at home with your family members to make your plan and gather your supplies in case we have to shelter in place for a lower level storm, in case we have to leave for a higher level storm. But with that city-assisted evacuation, from the moment you come to one of the 17 evacu spots around the city, you're going to be put into an N95 mask. That is going to drastically aid in what we can do as far as moving people. But yes, social distancing from the time you walk up to the evacu spot to the time you're in the shelter is going to have to be a factor in that, and that is what we're working on right now with our state and federal partners.
Thank you. WWL.
Mayor, is it concerning to you that neighboring parishes and municipalities may not be requiring some of the same measures as the city?
Well, to be honest, I'm concerned about it, absolutely. But I'm confident in our ability, meaning in Orleans Parish, to be with the, what do we call it, the early warning system that we're putting in place, as well as our contact tracing mechanisms that are in place, as well as our capacity in our hospitals to really get a handle should, we have an uptick, and be able to not only identify but isolate, box it in so it does not get back to community spread. I'm very confident in our ability to do that. The region 1, that's Orleans, that's Jefferson, that's St. Bernard, and that's Plaquemine. We've been leading in this from our initial response and how we've been able to hit that curve and consistently be on the decline. So as a region, we're where we need to be, meaning together. Now, that doesn't mean that my parish presidents and other parishes will be aligned with what we've presented here this afternoon. However, they're very much supportive, just like I am of them. We had a presentation on yesterday afternoon that Dr. Avegno gave our region leadership, parish presidents. It's how we communicate, how we collaborate. We do that in the city of New Orleans. So we're confident.
And one other question. You're allowing haircuts,
Yes.
but not massages, but they both require a hands-on touch.
Mm-hmm.
Why the difference?
Well, the guidelines speak to that, and the experts say that in regards to barber and beauty, that there are specific guidelines that they can follow to protect themselves as well as to protect their customers. They're very, very stringent. And with the cosmetology guidelines that are in place and were in place pre-COVID, right now it's really kind of forcing our beauticians and our barbers to kind of go back to the future, go back to those guidelines that have been in place that may have just been kind of ignored, over time. But I'm confident that those guidelines will protect our people, those who are rendering the service or those being served in those establishments. And again, 25% capacity. The guidelines speak to no places of, welcoming areas, none of that. They're very strict. And I would say maybe get familiar with them. But in regards to a massage, those are guidelines that a masseuse would not be able to adhere to. Doc, anything to add?
I think, again, a lot of this has to do with the intensity of the contact and the nature of the contact and the potential for being a high risk exposure. And there is a lot of nuance in it, but as the mayor said, there are very strict modifications that a barber or a beauty shop could make that would not be possible, for instance, for a massage therapist.
Okay, good. No, great questions. As it relates to the gym and going to the gym, you walk in, you have your face covering, and that's what's in your face covering on. They will not be required to wear the face covering while they're on the treadmill or the like. However, as it relates to the guidelines, there are protection that's in place from that patron. So there are partition, that's going up, the spacing. It's really laid out pretty significantly. That low risk, and so gyms will be allowed, but we're saying no locker rooms, no showers, no spas, no steam rooms, that sort of thing. So it's they have to modify their operations, but they can do that and provide a very low risk to their customers. As it relates though to libraries will be able to open at 25% capacity. They will. No groups, but they will. Now, you will hear more from the city in regards to when the libraries will be open and which ones throughout the city. That will be a phased approach as well, based on the staffing configurations, but we're working through that right now. But when the time comes in terms of opening, you will know sooner rather than later. As it relates, I think you said camps or summer camps. Okay, so what the city runs, is we have NORD, that is our recreation department. Now, summer camps are available as long as they adhere to the camp guidelines that have come from the CDC, Johns Hopkins, and the like. The groups, again, 10 or less. And so the ratio for adult to children, 1 to 9, that keeps it to that 10. NORD is preparing for opening in regards to summer camps, but that happens right around June the 15th. And that's consistent with just previous years. But NORD, the entire team and the leadership under Larry Barbino Jr. has been very focused on the guidelines and what those metrics will look like, operating procedures for NORD. So we know, no contact sports, but you can do the archery, the canoeing, and so tennis, those things. So we're preparing lap swim. So more to come, but those will be embedded in the first phase of reopening the city.
The advocate?
It's restaurants, so food establishments, barber, beauty salons, appointment only. Yes. Gyms, museums, that's a part of their guidelines as well. Yes, absolutely. And even greater. Sure. So how this works, it's a name and a phone number, number one, okay? So get you straight on that. A name and a phone number. And the LDH, the contact tracer, will contact the person that has tested positive. That's number one. From contacting that individual who's tested positive, then that individual needs to download with that contact tracer, where have you been? And I've been, if I've gone to a food establishment, I'll put that down. That contact tracer will then be able to contact that food establishment and say, hey, this is the information that I had. The establishment will be able to look to see who interacted with this individual in their establishment, protecting their employee, and of course, protecting other patrons that may have been in that establishment at that time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's multiple things. And Doc, speak on that. You know, it's mostly what we call our early warning system, all the dashboards and various things we look at to know if we're trending up or down.
Right. Yes. And you'll be able to see all of those are things that we talked about yesterday. We've talked about them. You know, we have to see the low and sustained decline in cases. We'll be looking at the number of tests. We'll be closely monitoring healthcare capacity, and there's multiple different metrics on that. So we're getting information from our testing sites, we're getting information from the state, we're getting information from hospitals and healthcare facilities, all of that on a daily basis. There's also the potential to do what some other cities are starting to do, particularly in Europe, and monitor virus trends in different ways. So all of these get fed into a dashboard that will update in real time, just as most of you have seen the Johns Hopkins map or the LDH map. And so we have a sort of yellow light, green light, red light system so that everybody will be able to see what's on green, what's on yellow, and where we've been going in the last couple of days.
And Doc, you want to add about our first responders? We'll be
Yes.
monitoring them.
Yes, of course, our first responders, you know, they're also an early warning system, right? Because they are interacting in close contact, and while they have adequate PPE, they also are interacting with the public, and our OPCD, our 911 call center, is going to be able to monitor, as they have been, the number of calls for service we get for particular markers of COVID. So whether that's flu-like or whether it's number of people calling for have a cough or a fever, if we start to see those numbers go up in conjunction with all the other data that we're seeing, then that could be another early warning sign. So it's not just from one place. We want to make sure we're hitting every possible place so we know sooner rather than later that we might need to intervene, so that we're not waiting 14 days before we're sort of caught in the middle of a huge case surge.
Two quick questions. First, piggybacking on Jeff, will the restaurants, salons, and so forth be required to hand over that data to the city or state? And the second question, we had talked about this yesterday, but on contact tracing, will the city be mandating, will there be an enforceable mandate on quarantine for people that contact tracers think are at high risk?
Oh, yeah, that has to be. Oh, that's a part of the process. We have to isolate. We have to box the virus in. And that's after positive? Absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of needing to do the contact tracing, because individuals that you've become in contact with will need to be quarantined for 14 days. That's what makes it so important and vital to us getting to the point where we can start to relax restrictions. But without it, we just cannot. Now, in regards to turning over, there's no turning over anything to anybody. Okay, that's number one. No turning over documentation. It's a reservation. Restaurants been taking reservations I don't know how long. That's what it is. A name and a phone number. You don't have to turn anything over, but if you're contacted by a contact tracer, give the information to protect your employees, to protect your patrons, and to set the tone that the city of New Orleans, who is a destination city, tourism being our number one, that we care not only about our residents and our employees, but we even care about the visitors that come to our city. So the better we do, the better we'll get back to opening up this economy for our residents and for our visitors.
And so on the mandated quarantine, I mean, I'm sure you're just hoping that people will follow the advice of contact tracing.
Hope so.
But have there been discussions on what enforcement looks like, or how you track someone's, strict quarantine methods?
Well, it's going to be just what we've been doing. Just how we have built that trust within the community and amongst our people to listen to the advice of public health experts as well as their government leaders. And they have been following, the guidelines. And we're encouraging people to do the same if we're going to come out of this. And we will, if we continue to do what we've demonstrated can be done.
Washington
Now, a part of the church guidelines, and many of them will have in place a process for determining or tracking who's coming to church with a limited capacity, right? And it can't be open. I'm sure not open to all. As I've talked to various pastors, the archbishop, and the like, there's a system that they're putting in place so that their parishioners will be able to say, hey, I'm coming to 10 o'clock, I'm going to 8:30, that sort of thing. But that's what they are creating, their own system. However, because of the guidelines for worship establishments or churches, the 6 feet apart is in place. You're not directly impacted by someone, or the interaction is less than 10 minutes. So they're not required as it relates to the contact tracing. However, they are creating mechanisms that could be used to help with contact tracing. Does that help you? Okay.
Jeff, you had another question to the advocate?
No. Right. Well, this is the thing. As Dr. Avegno talked about interactions over or 10 minutes or below, and with social distancing or physical distancing, there's no requirement for the contact tracing because the ability to spread the virus is absolutely limited because you're not in someone's immediate presence for longer than 10 minutes. In spaces that are longer than that, like a restaurant, for example, longer than 10 minutes. So you do need to have that reservation, that name, and that phone number. What we have learned from communicating with pastors, and I will include the Archbishop, is that, for example, the Archdiocese is having a system in place to where their parishioners will go online and pretty much click, which Mass that they'll attend. So from there, they will then determine the capacity, if they've exceeded or met the capacity or they still have open space. So they're not required in terms of contact tracing because of the distancing. However, because of the cap, they're wanting to create a system to make it easy for their people to attend church.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for your time. As the council member said, our council president, there is no perfect plan, right? There's no perfect plan. But we have confidence in what we have planned as it relates to the phased reopening of the city of New Orleans. Safest at home. Our people with underlying conditions, stay at home. Stay at home. And our whole goal here is to keep people alive. Because once we've lost them, we cannot get them back. And that's why life is precious. And we have to value it. Not only our own, but the lives of other people. So thank you again. Thank you, Council.